Hello everybody, I am here to talk to you about cyber physical infrastructure, a vision of the future, and how I believe we can create responsive infrastructure, a responsive society, and a responsive economy that responds to everybody's needs in real time. So, let's begin. This all began for me with the Infrastructure Projects Authority's Transforming Infrastructure Performance Roadmap, and here we see a vision of a connected world where the natural environment, the built environment, and services interact with the decisions being made by governments to reach the great objectives that we have. So this means that there are effectively, in this system, there are four main actors. There is government that needs to understand how its decisions are being implemented in services, in the built environment, in the natural environment, and they can get insight on that. So if they create an initiative to clad people's homes to increase energy efficiency and therefore, achieve greater energy security and get us towards net zero, they can measure that. They can measure that in real time. Then, of course, there are the citizens. So the people that are interacting with these services on a day-to-day basis, whether it is navigating the road network or the rail network, and the combination of those, or having clean drinking water, or access to when is the best time to go into town to go shopping, when is it least busy, I don't want to see other people, then they can do that. Whether it is infrastructure owners who are often under a lot of pressure to deliver the high standards that we expect of our infrastructure, so that there isn't polluted water, that we can get where we need to on time, that we can access the meetings online that we need to attend. Then there are the innovators. There's the market, inverted commas, the people who can unlock so much of these opportunities to drive insights in decision making, who can optimize services, create a better, more accessible infrastructure for all that is more just. Those people are looking for opportunities to help and support, and it can often be difficult for them to find ways into the infrastructure world to make and adapt changes. It was then followed on by the cyber physical infrastructure vision, empowering innovation, people, robotics, and smart machines to enhance prosperity, resilience, sustainability, and security. So this was done by the Robotics Growth Partnership in partnership with the Centre for Digital Build Britain to imagine a world of the future. And I would like to term that world a responsive infrastructure. So what is cyber physical infrastructure? Well, infrastructure are those services that we rely on. They are the public goods, as in they are good for people and provided generally. So we are talking on the one hand about rail and road networks to get people from A to B. On the other hand, we're talking about having clean water to drink. But we're also talking about access to the internet, which means that you can do business online. And that is the current understanding of infrastructure. You can also apply hospitals and healthcare to that as social infrastructure, things that are supporting people to live long, happy lives. And so you could also include in that reduction in pollution measures as infrastructure. And therefore, I get to call trees infrastructure, or certainly publicly owned and publicly available landscape. So, that's infrastructure. Cyber-physical, what is that? Well, physical is a thing, a tangible thing. It's physical. cyber is essentially saying technological. So physical, cyber, technological, physical things. So what we mean by cyber physical infrastructure is bringing the world of technology, both established technologies and emerging technologies, to how we design, construct, and especially operate infrastructure. And what does that mean, and what does that look like? Well, it could mean that, as is beginning to occur for in the kind of its nascent phases, the smart motorways, which in its early stages has managed to respond at a certain pace that could be improved to events that occur on motorways. And that has enabled greater capacity. And that's certainly a goal. And I think everybody would admit that we can do more. So what I am proposing is that we need responsive infrastructure so that it can respond to events that happen quickly, so that we can do something about it to keep things running, to keep making things better. So the smart motorway of the future will be able to respond with complete certainty to exactly what's happening on the roads, to prevent accidents, to keep traffic moving. And that is certainly one element. So that requires Internet of Things, so that you have sensors relaying information. It requires a digital twin to understand in the digital space exactly what is happening in the physical space. And artificial intelligence being trained on this data can then make insights that human beings struggle to, connecting together this complexity to make interventions, so that perhaps that's changing speed limits, but perhaps that's building new roads or closing roads, or changing how the layout is structured. In the energy network, energy security is a key aspect of the UK government's current policy, but energy resilience to climate change is also a massive one. So we need energy security, which means that we need to be able to rely on our own production. Now, that means, on the one hand, producing more green energy, whatever green means. You could say offshore wind, nuclear, those sorts of energy production facilities that release lower amounts of carbon into the atmosphere. But also, similarly, we could be looking at reducing energy usage. So if the government, if policymakers, if infrastructure owners can see how, for example, if they were to apply a cladding program to incentivize people to effectively give them free insulation on their properties, if they could see exactly what impact that has had on the energy usage, on the heat, on the well-being of people, then they can know whether or not that policy is working. And that would be extremely powerful to enable greater transparency in government, so that they can clearly see what is working, and it allows government to do its job better, so it can pivot to provide the services that are needed by citizens. So, just one more. The other thing here is, as well, electricity is not free, and there is a greater demand on it. With electric vehicles coming in, the demand on the network is increasing massively. So not only do we need to be able to understand what energy saving requirements are to be made and how effective they are, which cyber-physical infrastructure can assess by measuring using sensors and aggregating that information into a digital twin to make better policy decisions. We also need a better distribution setup and production, arguably, but with greater demands on the network, the system needs to be much more resilient to target electricity to where it is needed. So if that's local production, if it's changing how the electricity is distributed, And that is a huge cyber-physical infrastructure piece of work, because we are talking about the digital twin of the grid, so that we know where the energy is needed and where it's being produced. And we're also talking about making interventions to that grid so that we can do things about it. I don't have the graphic with me, but also robotics as well. We are talking about very remote pylons in this example, but the UK has been a world leader in the use of offshore renewable energy, wind turbines, and it is an incredibly dangerous job to go and maintain those. And to safeguard people's lives, we can be using robots connected to the mobile network, controlled remotely, to assess the state of wind turbines so that they can operate better for the long term. Clean water. So wastewater treatment works have been a key enabler of the modern world. When clean running water and sewage was first introduced, it immediately reduced deaths due to disease. And now we are seeing with climate change how the need to be resilient to changes in weather patterns, so that when water, suddenly a deluge of rain comes, water hits a dry, baked earth, it runs straight into the rivers, which can cause sewage to just spill straight into where we swim. And then, of course, the railway network, which has in the UK been a long-established piece of infrastructure that connects all of us, and having data about those journeys that are being made, and understanding how that interacts with other events. So if people are going to football matches, if there are going to be a lot of hen do's, these things are all predictable and can be measured using AI, and train journeys can be amended accordingly. Wouldn't it be wonderful if in the future there was always a train when we needed it, and also there weren't any trains when nobody needed it? I'm going to leave that with you. And then our cities, our homes, the places that we choose to go. The way that these operate now for the public good is very often reactive. So if changes to high streets happen, it can often be too late by the time that people realise that problems are occurring. If there are going to be serious issues on the streets, then often we are found to be reactive to those situations. But much more than that, cities can be places that we come together. They can respond to the needs of people. From simple things like, where are the bins located? Right now, that requires somebody's judgment. But ultimately, we can be measuring where those greatest amounts of footfall are, and we can understand exactly where rubbish is being left, and we can do things about it by putting bins in those places. And similarly, in big cities, waste can be a huge issue. So why would you arbitrarily go around emptying bins X times a day, sometimes in some cities, just because you know that there's a lot, when you could be dynamically responding to that waste issue? So you could go and empty bins when the bins are full. Once the system, so the digital twin of waste, has understood that there is enough of a route requirement, there is enough total waste to justify, it can then plot a route to go and pick up the waste that is being produced. And through that we can get to net zero. So we're talking about efficiency of existing systems. And that's such a huge requirement of the future. So what is being done to cyber-physical infrastructure? Well, as I alluded to earlier, the Environment Agency has already stated that they require better performance from water companies in terms of spilling effluent. So what they have done, and they are one of the first people to do something here, is they have increased their requirement for measurement. And what that has done is raised the standard of assessment and understanding that is going on inside the water industry, so that performance can improve. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So if we can improve the measurement, then we can manage it better. So that is a concrete example of a policy that has done something, a government agency that has made a change to the way it measures to improve performance. Then there are a number of projects being delivered under Innovate UK funding right now in order to show how cyber-physical infrastructure can improve the way that the world operates. Here is the image of the climate resilience demonstrator. This was a project first created inside the Centre for Digital Build Britain. It demonstrates how connecting the data between where electricity distribution is, so the pylons and the substations, with flooding data and planning, and the telecoms networks, that you can therefore see how these systems interact in climate resilience situations, which means that if there is to be a flood, you can understand how that will impact not only the telecommunications network, but also the electricity network. But then also there are other kind of unforeseen consequences. So if people are being cut off, how do we contact them? Can we ensure that there is resilience in the communications network so that we can still get hold of people? Is there resilience in the electricity network so that when climate events, when really nasty weather patterns do occur, that electricity distribution and generation and pylons, etc., are placed and arranged in such a way that it minimizes the impact? Digital twins have been a huge part of the development for better cyber-physical infrastructure, and the Connected Places Catapult through the Digital Twin Hub, which is your go-to source for all things digital twins, have provided, in collaboration with the Open Data Institute, some learning materials on digital twins. So that's raising the skills issue, because ultimately, if we are to deliver this future economy, this future resilient society, this future responsive infrastructure, this responsive government, then we need the skills to be able to make that happen. This is a great example from the Energy Systems Catapult of their motivation for doing this. This is a stark warning of the dangers of climate change and the complexity of managing a world where simply telling the person that owns the power station, or simply telling the person that is operating the grid in a given area that they need to do something isn't good enough. You need to connect them with each other and with policymakers so that they can do something, make interventions, make policies that make real changes to people's lives, to overcome climate change, to ensure energy security. And what that means is this connectivity, this virtual energy system, and this data sharing fabric. And what this does is this provides the service. You know, the policy and the infrastructure owners come together to create this policy that provides a more resilient network for citizens, but it also provides the opportunity for innovators to come in to understand how they could provide, for example, electrical vehicle charging station developers with a better understanding of where to put those stations. It would enable those people who are large users of electricity to work more closely with electricity providers and distributors so that they can use energy at the appropriate times. Right now, that's something that is done minute by minute, but the accuracy can be improved significantly because we're talking about the whole country, this whole mix of energy production. And if, for example, we are to continue manufacturing growth, manufacturing can be highly energy intensive. So creating the opportunity for manufacturers to time their manufacturing processes to most efficiently use energy can benefit us all by reducing the cost to the manufacturer and therefore making them more competitive, by providing a better, more even use of electricity when it is being produced, and also to ensure that infrastructure owners, the electricity providers and distributors, don't have to artificially break their systems. And that, of course, supports the government because then they can clearly understand and manage the costs of adding further energy, power and distribution networks to the future. This is from the Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult. They are looking here at a centre of excellence that is Grimsby. Now, Grimsby is, as a port, the world's leading centre of operations and maintenance expertise in offshore wind in the world. And wind turbines collect a lot of data, but connecting them to a wider system can be very challenging because we would be talking about adding extra cables, changing the cables. That's another thing to maintain. So, of course, using mobile networks is a better way of sharing information. And what that enables is a better understanding, a smarter understanding of how wind turbines are performing, because they are, I discovered, collecting up to 1,400 pieces of information per wind turbine. But you can't expect people to just collect that for the sake of it, because that has a huge impact on the amount of data infrastructure that we would then need to implement. So this system of 5G connecting together through fibre where it's feasible to do so, and through satellite connections in the future, enables a much better understanding of the performance of those wind turbines, which in turn means that we can manage them better, they can last longer, and that increases our energy resilience, it increases the resilience of our infrastructure. And there will be all sorts of exciting ways of changing and adapting to weather patterns, to how they're used, how they're maintained, which can create in turn the opportunity for DOME. This is a concept from the Offshore Renewables Energy Catapult that is effectively a digital operations and maintenance environment, so that they can bring together, aggregate data for the purposes of understanding exactly how wind turbines perform, so that you could feed it into AI models so that they can make recommendations. You know, it might be as simple as you should turn them off under certain circumstances after X weather situation, or it could be that you need to go and intervene after a specific set of occurrences that AI can see that we can't. But also it helps planning for future development of offshore renewable wind farms. So what that could really mean effectively is that we understand much better how wind farms operate, how the wake, there is a wake behind a wind turbine that can interact with other turbines. And that data can be made available to third parties. So those people who are running simulations for them can resell their data, their products, to a wider market, and through this we could create an international market for operations and maintenance, not just data but innovations that use AI and machine learning that have a true understanding of the physics systems in play. So that really has a huge opportunity to provide these problem solvers or innovators with the opportunity to support the infrastructure owners and operators, the wind industry, with insights into how best to manage their assets so that they last longer and they work better. The Satellite Applications Catapult is developing a maritime innovation centre at Forley, so this is on the south coast of England, and like Grimsby, the Catapult network creates a lot of opportunities for local innovators to get involved, and it's through that ecosystem of innovators solving problems, developing new products, trying things out, that we can really push into the world of the future, into that responsive infrastructure, so that these maritime assets can be managed better. And satellites play a huge role in how we operate the world of the future. For example, across long distances of railway track, satellites can assess how that track moves, if tunnels subside, if Earth subsides over time. It's not the sort of thing that you can assess easily. You certainly can't see it on site unless you were looking for it, but that is the sort of thing that can really be easily picked up by satellites, creating a digital twin of the Earth and using sophisticated algorithms to measure that change over time. And there are always new ways of doing things, new emerging technologies. So supporting startups. The Digital Catapult has done a lot of work in the metaverse, exploring that concept in ways that allow people to immerse themselves in infrastructure in the way that maybe planned proposals are to be implemented, so that we can have greater engagement with citizens, so that they can truly understand the impact that infrastructure could have on their futures. And the Apollo Protocol, which is a bringing together of different industries. This is another opportunity for infrastructure owners to better understand how manufactured products work in their infrastructure. Very often, manufactured products will simply fail and fail and fail until somebody realizes that there is a problem, and it could be that the product was specified incorrectly. It could be that it was installed correctly. It could be that it's in the wrong place. Or there are so many potential problems. And this is such a prosaic example, but how many hand sanitizing bottles are empty? How many soap dispensers are empty? How many taps are broken? These sorts of understandings of how manufactured products interact with infrastructure, interact with the built environment, is a huge opportunity, not just for manufacturers to create better products that are optimized, also for innovators to support the built environment, the infrastructure owners and operators, with their manufactured products, so that they work as intended and they last longer and they do a better job. And those manufacturers, so that they can get this external expertise, and that is knowledge that can be shared around the world. It can therefore, increase the capability of the UK market. The UK innovation can be shared with the world, which we have done many times before. So therefore, things will perform better. They could last longer, and therefore be more sustainable. We can create better skills that are shared with a greater group of people, and therefore create a value chain that can clearly draw how the interventions that it is planning to make and that it makes make a difference. So what is industry saying? So I have been doing the cyber-physical infrastructure independent review, and that's where this presentation comes from, because we are making recommendations. So in terms of industry, those that are operational within R&D projects often struggle to see how they fit into the wider network, which is a huge issue for them, because the whole point here is that we're trying to connect systems. Other innovators feel that working with government can be difficult for them. It can be bureaucratic, and it can be almost arbitrary. So perhaps they don't fit into a certain box, or perhaps it takes months for decisions to be turned around, because there are processes that were put in place for very good reasons, because problems occurred previously, and because government is accountable to its citizens. So when it does make decisions, they need to be well reasoned and articulated. Things can be slow, but they can be better. And then also, when these innovations are produced, people don't understand how they interact with them. How do they interact with a digital twin for policymakers? How can a robotics cluster support them? How can they get involved in a maritime innovation centre? So those are just some snippets, but we interviewed over 50 companies from across venture capitalists, startups, research organisations, consultancies, contractors, infrastructure owners, operators, government departments, to get a full understanding of the innovation ecosystem that is in place. So what does that mean that we need? Well, at the moment, infrastructure owners are doing their level best with what they have, and I believe that, to give the best infrastructure service that they can. But that in order to make improvements, we need to create a drive, we need to create a pull. So that government pull is some sort of incentive to change how infrastructure is operated. We need greater innovation, so to make changes to the way that all that infrastructure operates, we need to be able to make rapid changes. We need to be able to test ideas. We need to be doing cool things. But as has been discussed, it can be quite difficult to get involved in that. It can be quite difficult to have the impacts that you need. So therefore, at long last, the recommendations, and I'm going to move myself. Nope. I'm going to move myself. There you go. So that you can see all of them. So number one is a cyber-physical infrastructure mandate. We need better measurement across government and regulated industries against existing performance indicators for sustainability, for engagement, for social good, for the performance of those assets. I'm not saying new, we are not saying new measures. The measures that are in place are often very good, but sometimes we've heard how data can be produced into PDFs that then require a lot of processing in order to derive a measurement, which can then lead to an insight. So you can see how effectively, if somebody is trying to improve their infrastructure and they're requiring data, but that data is produced in a PDF, locked in a filing cabinet at the bottom of a deep dark tunnel, that it can be really difficult for them to understand what's truly going on. So we need to unlock the data, and the way that we do unlock that data is by requiring better measurement, so that people are incentivized using their existing R&D programs, using new R&D programs to create better ways of measuring and therefore improving performance, because those two things do go hand in hand, of infrastructure. We need a bridging unit, so this is connecting existing projects, existing initiatives, data sharing, R&D, performance enhancement, existing innovations. We found so many existing innovations that could provide insights and utility to other parts of infrastructure that, for example, could understand exactly how business rates should be measured and assessed and rolled out. Could be used everywhere. You could be looking at a huge amount of innovation that, unfortunately, because of the project nature of research and development, gets lost. It reaches the end of its project lifecycle and it ends, and then it doesn't scale into a business, and that's what we are seeking to unlock. So this bridging unit has an engagement hub. So we're going to bring together these existing innovations, the new innovations that are coming through, the innovators, with the infrastructure owners, with citizens, with government, so that we can ensure that infrastructure can become responsive, that it can perform as is required by citizens, that it can meet its obligations that infrastructure owners have, and that government can very clearly make interventions in infrastructure, in policy, that have tangible, credible, long-term results. That obviously means that a lot of data is going to be shared. So a marketplace for infrastructure data is required. And this is not like eBay or Amazon or some sort of online store. We discovered a lot of data repositories, libraries, catalogs, marketplaces online. But very often the data there is done, again, very project-based. So it was done for 2 years and then it stopped. And so that creates real issues. So where data is being produced, that often doesn't see the light of day. And where data has been produced that's seen the light of day, that idea reached its end goal and it stopped. That is clearly a need for market creation. So by market, we mean who is going to use that data? Who is going to do something? Can infrastructure owners, by making data available to innovators, understand how to improve their infrastructure? Yes, they can. But often it's the innovators who are the ones who know what innovations could be made. So they, by getting access to data through a data sandbox, can provide that service. So what we're proposing here is that infrastructure owners and operators get better access to data services, and so they are provided with where they are making these interventions to make their measurements more effective, or where they're just providing other enhancements to their infrastructure. That support is provided in terms of making data reusable, making it secure, ensuring that the correct legal frameworks are in place. And that capability is effectively an onboarding. So the marketplace for infrastructure, the data sandbox, is an onboarding mechanism for infrastructure owners to be able to share their data with the market, to allow government to show that they are meeting their obligations, to allow citizens to see what impact infrastructure is having in their lives, to ensure that it's benefiting everyone, that we're going to achieve net zero, that we can make better use of infrastructure. So that data sandbox is requires computational technology. So it will require a location, a data center, to act as that gateway into the wider network of existing services. So by having experts, innovators with new solutions vetted, brought onto that site, we can onboard this data into an ecosystem that is ready to provide insights and improvements to the way that infrastructure is run. Now, this sandbox approach is very important. It's been used a lot of times to great effect, because if you are going to change the way that things run, you shouldn't change the regulation overnight. You shouldn't change your data practices overnight. So that's why sandboxes are so important. So a regulatory sandbox is recommended to allow the infrastructure owners to change the way that they interact with regulation, to allow government to change the way that policies are made, to test new ideas, so that rather than complying with the letter of the law, we can achieve the outcomes that government policies are set to achieve. So that was it. That was quite long. Apologies for that. I think the future of infrastructure is worth fighting for. There is a clear vision to make sure that infrastructure is responsive to the needs of citizens, to the regulation, to the policy of government, that it is responsive to the needs of infrastructure owners so that they can understand how things are really working, and that it is responsive to innovators to unlock this innovation ecosystem to enable ever-growing improvements in how infrastructure runs for everybody, to achieve net zero, to embed climate resilience, and then to share this knowledge with the world to create an international innovation ecosystem. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to hearing from you all soon. I've been Henry Fenby-Taylor. Thank you very much for watching this presentation. Take care.